What's up, everybody? Welcome to another awesome RedShift tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about the node graph and getting into some advanced shader techniques and really breaking down how to get some scratches and grunge and even a displacement map into your scene, so you don't have this really base physical render looking stuff that you've probably been getting with just the normal materials, but you can start getting some really nice physically accurate renders out of RedShift. All right, guys, let's hop into it. So before we hop into Cinema4D like I normally do, I want to take a look at this image that we're going to be manipulating and trying to recreate. So I made this in RedShift earlier, and it is two materials put together with a bunch of textures and a displacement map and some reflection scratches and diffuse scratches and various things, all from the French Monkey. So if you don't have his texture pack or you're looking for textures to follow along, go check out the French Monkey. He's got awesome packs for texturing things and adding grunge and scratches and smudges and different things to really make this look more realistic and not just a standard render. So I just want to go over that before we hop into Cinema so you can get an idea of what we're working with or working towards in this tutorial. All right, so now we're inside Cinema4D, and I'm going to break down the scene a little bit. So we've got 3 area lights, a cool one on the head, and then 2 warmer ones off to the side. So you can see it's a little bit orange over here, mostly blue here. And then we've got our model, and we've got a leftover missing model icon there that I'll take out. And that's pretty much it. We're going to keep this scene really light and simple just so we can get into the nitty-gritty of the node. So we're going to start with just a base RedShift material, and I keep all my information docked here so you can add yours in wherever you need to. And I'm going to start off by renaming this base because we're actually going to work with a couple different materials and merge them together, and we can go ahead and put this on the model. And the base material for RedShift is plastic, so we've got this plastic look. And there's 2 ways you can get into the node graph from here. So first, if we double tap on this here and hit edit shader graph, it'll bring us into there. And it's also available in this menu here. So if you look at it, it might seem overwhelming at first. And if it does, go watch our first series of videos on the basics of RedShift materials and how to get started changing the different settings and what each tab does. We go through the base material, the subscattering material, and the car paint ones. Those seem like the 3 main ones that people would probably get started with, and then come back and jump into this. So with that said, if you come from a background of Octane or standard or physical render, you're probably wondering, where are the texture buttons? Where do I click the little ... to add in my textures from a directory? Well, it doesn't really work that way with RedShift. You'll just see we've got these base options here. They don't bake it into this. They want to make these as modular as possible and let the designer, the artist, control it how they want. So to really start adding in textures, we're going to do that all through the node graph here, or the shader graph. I'm probably going to keep calling it the node graph, just from working with Houdini, but you know, shader graph, node graph, all the same. So I'm going to slide these over and slide this over, and I'm going to name this base 2 just so I don't get lost. So in here under basic, you can rename it base. And if your scene looks a little different than mine, I keep all my attributes tabbed over here, but it could also be right in here for you, depending on how you have your setup. So if you're wondering where your stuff is or why it's not looking the same, I just have mine customized to be over here. So you'll notice here we've got all the same properties that we had in our material editor. And if we bring in a texture from over here, so under textures, texture, you'll see there's nowhere to pipe this into. What do we do? So if we go and click on the blue, you'll see we get the drop down here, and it's everything that we have here. So diffuse, color, weight, roughness. If I pipe this over again, we get diffuse, color, weight, and roughness. So it all lines up. The first thing I'm going to show you is adjusting the specular and adding some grunge to that. So I'm going to name this specular base, and probably adjust this up to like blue, purple color. It's kind of blue here, a little bit more purple here. I'm not sure why those don't match up perfectly, but whatever. And I'm going to pipe this over to reflection and we're going to control the roughness through this map that I have. So this texture map is from the French Monkey. If you're looking for really great textures, go check out the French Monkey. He's awesome. And he's got 3 packs out now, so grunge, scratch, and smudge. Let's go ahead, let's do some light smudges to begin with. And now what we'll do, lucky number 13, we're going to grab glossiness, which is pretty similar to specular or reflection. And I don't need to copy it over. And sometimes RedShift likes to cache the images in the background. So if you ever bring in a texture and it doesn't load right away, just give it a second. It may happen in this tutorial too, where we just wait a second for it to load up in the background. Luckily for this, it was really quick. And you can start to see in here, we've got some grunge already, some little specular hits from this texture. And to show you what the texture looks like, I'll pipe it into the diffuse color. And you'll see it's mostly white with some gray dots in here. We'll get closer so you can see. And they're so light that you don't really notice them, but if I take it off, and it's just the diffuse now, you can really see them. So we'll pipe it back in to just the roughness. So we have these nice little specular hits. But that's not nearly as strong as I'd like it. So how do we control that? There's a little bit of controls in here. Maybe adjust. You can change the alpha, pull that back, and that makes it a little bit weaker. But there's a better way to go about it. And there's really 2 ways. You can either take a ramp under textures here, which is the method I'm going to show you. There's also some other ways to do it under color and math. You can do like a color correction. You can start mixing it with some other stuff too. To start, let's go ahead and just bring in a ramp. And what the ramp is the gradient, and connect this up here into our input. And as soon as I connect into the reflection, you're gonna notice everything disappears. And that's because this naturally reads from the UV map. And we need to tell it to do the alternative input source right here. And you'll see we start to get everything back, except it's really flat now. And that's because this ramp is controlling everything. So all the blacks and grays and everything are now being remapped through this ramp here. And so if I bring this white down, everything will start to pop out a lot more, and we get a lot more control over it. And maybe I need to go the other way. Let me see. Depends on the map. Sometimes you need to bring up the blacks, and sometimes you need to bring down the whites. Come on. Just got to find that sweet point. I might have to grab a different map. There might be too much gray in the map that I chose. I think that's what's happening. So let's go ahead and just get some scratches. Yeah, there's a lot of just gray in there. So we'll do scratches. Scratch kit, let's do number 7. I don't know these by heart at all. I'm just grabbing at random, and we'll do metallic. Nope. Let's see if it's going to cache. So yeah, this is one of those situations where it's just caching in the background a little bit. It's going to take a second to update. You can see I'm trying to drag and select that node, and it's still just taking a second. So if this happens to you, just wait until it says progressive rendering, or until you can start selecting things again. And just to make sure everything's in here the way I want, just pipe it in clean so we can see those scratches, and then we'll bring in the ramp and reconnect everything. So input, roughness, and it should go away. Change it to Alt. Everything should come back. Perfect. All right, this is what I wanted. And so now that there's nice clean blacks and whites in this map, we can start to adjust. So as I move this around, you can see we're starting to get really harsh edges in here that really stand out. So some flat plastic in here, and then where the specular really hits these scratches, let me pipe this back into the diffuse color so we can see it line up. And so right in here, these black areas where the scratches are, that's telling the specular to only shine right there. So if we rotate around, see we get all these cool little scratch specular hits. But our giant really shouldn't be plastic. He should be metal. So let's go ahead and change him to something metal like iron. We can do that in the preset here, iron. And there we go. Now we're starting to get some like really strong hits. But it seems like this should probably be reversed, right? So everywhere that is black should probably not be strong, and everywhere that's white should actually be the iron. And we can do that simply by right-clicking on this here and do invert knots, or adjust and hit invert, and now we'll get the exact opposite. So now that seems about right. It looks like he's got iron and he's been in a battle and he's all beat up and rough. Maybe if you've seen the movies from when he was crash landing on Earth, got all these scratches. However, this iron looks way too shiny still, so I'm going to start to adjust the reflection and the weight a little bit. I'm just going to do a regular IOR, and I think maybe like a 2.2 be a bit better. Yeah, that's looking a little better, and I like GGX because it kind of rounds it out a bit more. And, you know, I'm going to bring this weight back just a little bit and add in a little bit of diffuse, just maybe like a happy little tree of 0.025. So that's looking pretty good. Still a little bit shiny, so maybe we should add some more specular adjustments. Maybe scratch this up some more. And the way we can do that is, if you've ever used Photoshop, they have something in RedShift that's like a mini Photoshop, and that's called a color layer. And a little warning that it won't read your textures right away. So if I was to pipe this right into base color and then put it into the reflection roughness, you'll see everything goes away. And even if I make sure it's not being mixed with this black here, it still gets kind of screwed up. And if I go to add, still kind of screwed up. And so you really need to have this ramp, I've found. And, you know, if you're watching this and you're screaming at me saying, no, I'm an idiot, there's other ways to do it. Okay, cool. Leave a comment and let me know, because I can't seem to get this to work without a ramp. It's just a little bypass that I've had to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and set this back to normal. And see, I'm already having trouble with it. I think if I do average, there we go. Yeah, if I set that to average and have a ramp, that's what I have found to work best. But like I said, if you know a way to do it without having a ramp, please let me know so I can update everybody. So we've got that piped in here, and I've duplicated this, and this isn't going to be our base anymore. This is going to be spec, we'll say 02, and we can make it a little bit lighter but keep it in the same family there. Now it's kind of showing up as purple. And let's find some other scratches, maybe a grunge this time. It's a little bit broader hits. We'll do 5. And that's not the one I meant to choose, was clicking too quickly. And we'll do dirt. Nope, don't need to copy it. And we will pipe it into layer 1 color. So what you're going to see is it's going to start to average these two together. And as we make adjustments on the ramp, you'll see more of the scratches will come through, more detail will come through, and I think if we do invert, we'll get an even better result, because there's a lot of blacks and whites in this one. I think the inverse is going to work better. So now we're really getting this cool, beat up, grungy look here. So we rotate around with really nice flat areas, really nice specular hits. And that's all good, but what if we want to add some like real scratch details, like if that had some depth? So we can do that very easily with a bump map. And so what a bump map is going to do is it's going to use black and white coordinates, or a normal map will use X, Y, and Z coordinates, which translate into RGB values to make this look like it's actually got some detail to it. So we're going to do that very similarly through a texture, and I'm going to rename this bump. I'm going to do 01 in case we start to merge it with some other stuff. And we can also look for a bump map in here, and you'll see there's bump blender. So that's why I named this 01. It's kind of like using this color layer here where you can start to blend bump maps together and normal maps together. You know what? You can just do a normal map in here too. And don't even need this one. But so you can pipe a normal map into a bump map and it will convert it, or you can just use a normal map and pipe that into the bump input here. And this actually already has the image in here. So we'll just do grunge. Don't need to copy that. And we'll come over here, go to overall bump. And now we start to really get some indents in here. So as I get really close, turning it around. And so for all the people out there, they're saying that Octane just looks like, physical or like toy renders and things like that. That's because you can't do stuff with it straight out of the box. You've got to get in here, start getting your hands on the shader graph and playing around and making your materials look good. Like you can't, it's not like Octane where they just hand feed you silver and it looks like silver. This is a biased renderer, so you get to control everything that you want. And there's a place for unbiased renderers and Octane, and I still use Octane for projects and client projects too. I've just really come to love the way this works, and coming from Arnold and how it ties in with so many of the same features, it just seems to make sense to me a lot more. So that's why I'm making these tutorials. But I hear a lot of you saying it just doesn't look real enough. So this is how you do that. You can't just rely on the base shaders. So as we're looking around this, you can see we've got some really nice details in there with the scratches. And let's look around over here. It's looking all right, but maybe we can go a little bit further still. So I like these iron spots and how they're coming through and what's happening, but I want more variety. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a whole new layer and get started with that, or a whole new material and get started with that. So I'm going to grab another base material, and I think I'm going to make this one, we'll do copper, and I'm just going to call this copper, and maybe make it kind of an orange like copper. And to start, I'm going to put it into here just to make sure it's updated nice. So yep, that's looking exactly what I want. And what you can do is blend materials together too, just like we saw with the bump blender. So there's bump blender, there's a displacement map blender, here is material blender. So this is going to be the same deal. We've got our base here, and we're going to put it in our base color. If I put it back to our surface, you'll see it goes back, and we've got everything that we've already done. If I bring this in here, just like we did with our color layer, and go to layer 1, layer color, you'll see it starts to try and mix stuff together. And what we're going to need to do is adjust our blacks and whites. So what happens is it's trying to take data from this, but because it's all the way at black, it's saying don't take any. And when we bring this back up, you'll see it starts to get added in there. But I think additive works a little bit better. It starts to actually like add the two a little more, and it looks like we're getting some like weird texture artifacting, and I think that's because we're in progressive. Let me go into bucket render and see if that fixes it, because that's weird. I've never had that happen. Yeah, so that cleans up. Okay, so you can see the details in there, but it's not nearly what I want. So what we can start to do is take some of these textures that we've already added in and pipe them into our copper and invert them a little bit and play with them a little bit. So from here, double click on that to get our out color again. And I'm going to go into reflection and then roughness. And you'll see it adds up to the same spots. And that's cool if we wanted all of our iron to be replaced with this copper, but I don't. I kind of want the iron to be or the copper to be where the iron has been scratched. So what I'm going to do is do an invert search, If I could type, there we go. And you'll see there's a few different things. So there's math invert, vector invert, color invert. I think the one I'm going to want is just a color invert. So pipe it into the input here, bring that over here. You'll see everything gets reversed now. So on top, we've got this kind of iron look coming through, and it's being added into the copper a little bit. And then our base is kind of shifted into this copper now. So now we're blending the two worlds together. And let's see if it helps if I apply it to the alpha too. Doesn't make it any stronger. That's okay. So you can also just use a ramp and control it more manually. And so under our blend, I'm going to go ahead and bring this back just a bit, get some of our original material coming through. There we go. I'm starting to like how that looks. So it's got like this kind of old copper iron oxidization look going to it. And if we wanted to, we could add in even more layers. But let me see what happens if I turn off additive. Maybe I'll like the result of that better. Bring this back up. I kind of like that too. I like both of them for different reasons. Let's try like 48% without the additive. That's kind of cool. Check this on. So you can very easily do some look dev. It looks like right around 48, 50%. It doesn't make that big of a difference. But you know what? Something I want to do is make him look beat up a little bit more. So we can bring in a displacement map. So to do that, I'm going to look for displacement, drag that into here. And I'm going to turn off my bucket rendering. And this one you actually have to bring in a texture to. It's not like the normal map where it gives you the option. So let's go ahead and search for a texture. And we can rename this to displace. And I'm going to stop this for a second because I think the recording plus going with all the textures is kind of making my mouse jump around a little bit. Let's see if I can get my CPU back on track. And there we go. So I'm going to find another grunge map. Let's do 13. And we'll do this normal here. Nope. And sorry about this. My computer's starting to run slow, probably from the recording. Come on, there we go. Oh, doesn't want to like me at the moment. There. Drop down. Come on, don't crash. You can do it. You can do it. There we go. Sorry guys, sorry this is lagging a little bit. And then we just want to go down to texture, texture map. Give that a second to think. And then we're going to grab the out of this, go to our output, and in our output, we can do some displacement. And it's the first option right there. So pipe that right into that. And all right, sorry for the little hiccup there. My recording software was crashing in the background, so it crashed. And so now we're back to this. It brought down everything. So if it looks a little different at the moment, it's just I've recreated the model and I am at the same point where I want to hook up the displacement. So here's our texture and here's displacement. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this out point and put it in displace, which let me open this back up for you guys. So there's that. And man, that looks really strong, doesn't it? And that's just because we need to make some adjustments and also turn on bucket rendering. So progressive rendering isn't gonna have the most accurate look. It's just gonna be like a janky whatever. There's some displacement on here. As soon as we turn on bucket rendering, it'll start rendering the way it's supposed to look. And it's got some decent displacement. I'm not sure why it's taken so long to render. It usually goes a lot faster than this. Let me change my encoding from, there we go. I think it's because I had that on vector instead of height field. Depending on what kind of map you're using, you can adjust your encoding so it reads different ways. So now instead of just the scratches that we had right here in our bump input, we're actually getting the real displacement to our polygons. So bumps don't actually displace the polygons. It's kind of faking it and telling the light to react in certain ways when it hits these areas, while an actual displacement map really does displace the polygons a bit. And the cool thing about this, instead of adding a displacement inside Cinema4D and really displacing the polygons, is it's happening when it's rendering. So you're not having to have it process here and then process again in the renderer. It's just all processed at the end. So you can work a lot lighter and faster. So now you can see we've got all these little details of displacement happening in there. And I'll turn this back to progressive. And you'll see it's still there, but it's not going to be nearly as nice. Bucket rendering is really going to go. And also, I added in a camera from last time. Let me get out of that so we don't have our depth of field. So if we get really close, progressive rendering, like I said, sometimes makes it really janky and doesn't get all the details. It's holding up all right here, but if I turn bucket rendering back on, you'll see we get really accurate details. So all right in here, all looks like it's been scuffed up at some point from a crash landing or whatever. All right, so if you guys have any questions as I reset my frame, reach out to me at _531 on Twitter. You can reach out to Brograph at Brograph on Twitter, or brograph at brograph.com, or my email is liam at FIVE, the word 5 -31.com. And I'll put all this in the description, or I'm sure Brograph will. And if you have any questions in the meantime, write them down and then save them for Thursdays, because Thursdays we do a live stream and you can come in and ask us a Q&A about the topic that we covered this week. So this week it's the node graph and kind of advanced textures, and we touched on it last week live, and this is why I ended up doing this tutorial this week, is I thought this would be a good segue from the 3-part series into a more advanced material node graph editing topic. So every Thursday, usually around 9 p.m. Eastern time. Sometimes it's pushed back or pulled up an hour. So it could be 8, it could be 10, but usually we're hitting 9 o'clock Eastern time. We'll do a live Q&A on Periscope, Twitch, YouTube, and everywhere else that we can stream to. And hop in, join the chat. A lot of times it's just us having fun and seeing if we can break RedShift or make my computer crash or do whatever. Again, thank you so much for subscribing to me, to Brograph, to the comments you're leaving, all the feedback you're giving me, everyone that's reaching out on Twitter through direct messages and asking me how to do something. And as we work through problems together, it's really fun for me. So this has really been great, and please keep it up. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm really easy to talk to and get a hold of, and I love problem solving with you guys. All right, guys, have a great week, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.